Oh, we're recording. I did not see you click the record button. I was like, why are you looking at me like that?
You do the opening.
Sorry.
So,
hello, everybody.
hello.
I'm Shannon.
I'm Alyssa.
And you're listening to B Movie Bash.
B Movie Bash.
Thanks for joining us today.
Yes, thank you. This time, we will be talking about 2005's Long Distance, which I want you all to be aware, it took me 2 weeks to find this movie. I watched it years ago with my friend Catherine, and every time I tried searching for the name of this movie, because I knew the whole plot in my head, but I could not for the life of me remember the name of the movie. So every time I Googled it, it was not that movie. It took me days to figure this out. And finally, I found it after just searching and typing in as much of the movie as I could remember into Google, like every single detail that I could remember into Google. Finally, I found it. And
isn't that how you happened upon The Caller, too?
No, I watched The Caller a long time ago. Oh. Yeah, no. But every time I typed this one in, it tried to tell me it was The Caller. And I was like,
maybe that's what it was. Yeah.
It's not that one. Yeah. But honestly, I don't know. I think I'd rather watch The Caller again.
That's what it sounds like, yeah.
Yes. So this one is starring Monica Keenan, Ivan Martin, and Kevin Chapman's voice, because you don't see him in the movie. He's just the voice on the phone.
Any of those people are.
You shouldn't, because I don't know who the fuck they are either. Okay. She has been in a lot of things, which I realized that she was in one of the other movies that I want to talk about, which is Snow White: A Tale of Terror. Oh. She's Snow White, which is like, she's the bitchiest bitch Snow White of all time. And the whole time you're just like, no, I'm rooting for the evil queen. Like the whole time in the movie, you're like, evil queen for the win, you know? Except for hot guy Will, who's technically grumpy of the dwarves. Hot guy Will. Anyway. Okay. We'll talk about that later. Anyway, so this has a 5.2 rating on IMDb and an audience score of 41% on Rotten Tomatoes. There's no official score on Rotten Tomatoes. So,
not like terrible.
Not terrible. No. Okay. This is a sucky movie. So, first of all, we open to a voice calling out to Nicole a couple of times. Just, Nicole, kind of, over the sounds of an ambulance and police radio chatter, and flashes of an EMT carrying a stretcher, just kind of fading in and out of, like, the sounds that are going on and stuff, right? Okay. Then all goes white and just kind of, like, pans over a bed with sheets, and you just see the sheets spotted with blood, a big old kitchen knife, and then a phone that is just doing the dial tone, where you had it on for too long. And then, if you would like to make a call, please hang up and dial again.
Well, that's something I haven't heard in a very long time.
Very long time.
Wow.
Yes. And then all of a sudden, it shows Nicole, like, not even like the mailbox opening. To see. No, it's just Nicole standing there opening up her mailbox. And then we see on the inside of the mailbox. I'm like, I would so much rather the screen go black and then the mailbox be opening. Yeah. And her, like, so it was just awkward.
That's the dramatic shot you want.
Exactly. But it was like all of a sudden her standing there opening a mailbox and looking inside and seeing nothing's there. And she's just like, And now let me tell you about Nicole for a second here. Okay. Blonde hair, blue eyes. She's pretty. Okay. I should say, all these other people starring in the movie are nothing in comparison to the two breakout stars of this, which is Nicole's nipples. And they are there. They are there through the entire movie. There's so many times in my notes where I say Nicole and her nipples go to the other room, because they're there. Like, and sometimes in movies, like, you see them and you're like, meh, it's raining. Meh, she's cold. It's whatever, Yeah. Oh, it's a sex scene. They're supposed to be there. Meh, whatever, right? No, they're like the entire movie. Good. Yep. There's like 2 outfits she wears where you're not like, oh, Nicole and her nipples. Like, like it's just, they're there. So if I start talking about them again, that's because they're overly abundant at that point. Gotcha. So, yes. So she heads into her apartment wearing sweatpants and a t-shirt and a big old, like, huge jacket that, like, looks like a guy's jacket. Yeah. And she just looks kind of disheveled. I'm so sorry if my dog's barking in the background. They're just jealous that they can't be in here, but they're too loud if they're in here, and they're too loud if they're out there, and they're just little brats. Anyway, so she's looking really disheveled, but this whole time, throughout the entire movie, she just has these boo-boo kiss me eyes and puckered lips and I just wanted to slap her face. Okay. Anyway, so she's there getting into her apartment and she's just kind of She looks depressed, or me on an average day kind of a thing. You know, anyone in 2020.
Look at us right now.
Exactly,
cool.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, she also wears the shirts because this is the early 2000s and nothing can touch your pants. So she wears the shirts that are just ever so slightly higher than her
of stomach because you don't want to be too slutty.
Yeah, in your own house.
A little bit slutty.
Just a little slutty, yes. Yeah. So she gets inside and she goes to check her answering machine and she's all excited because there's a message there. And she just does this like,
is it her birthday or like no. What? Okay, she's just real excited for mail and messages.
We'll see.
Okay.
But she's all excited because she's like, oh, I have a voicemail. And it's her mother. And her mother's like, Nicole, you need to call me back. I haven't heard from you in forever. And
Nicole.
I'm like, yeah. And I'm just like, this lady is a bitch of a woman. I don't care whatever about Nicole later. Your mother's a bitch. So yep. So she's all, all excited. she keeps doing this, like, touching her face, like, kind of, like, it's really, she's not a very good actress in this movie. And I've only seen her in that one other movie. Yeah. And maybe I should, because I screenshotted some of the others that she's in, because they look a little B-movie, too.
Okay.
So I might go watch those. Maybe she's a better actor in this one. I don't know. She just was awful in this one. Like, everyone else blew her out of the water, and she just...
Except for the nipples.
Except for her nipples. Her nipples were, like...
First class.
Yeah. Yep. They were continuously on point. Yes. So she's just like, oh, it's my mom, right? So she makes a TV dinner, and the other thing you need to know about Nicole is that I am 1,000% certain that she is actually an alien that has seen a human being once from a distance, and is trying to mimic human existence. Great. Okay, because she does a lot of things in this movie that I'm just like, a normal adult person does not do these things, right? But then she also does things that, like, a normal person does do, and but some of her actions, I'm just like, what, are so deliberate. Like, it'll make sense that I explain, but like,
okay.
I have in the notes the difference between normal Nicole and alien Nicole. So, like, I put alien Nicole in some of my notes. So she gets a TV dinner, and this is alien Nicole here, with a gigantic fucking knife, stabs through the entire plastic into her meal, okay? And was like...
After it's cooked?
After it's cooked. So, the plastic you're supposed to be able to peel off the top?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ever so conveniently.
Yes. She just stabs into it, and, like, not just, like, the plastic. I could see if you're like, oh, I hate trying to tear off the plastic because it doesn't come off all the way. I can see that.
Yeah.
But no, she just, like, one big, long cut into the plastic.
Into her food.
And into her food.
Yeah, that's an alien.
That's an alien, right?
What?
And then pours herself a glass of wine, and then she sits down to work on more of her thesis because she's a grad student.
I thought you were going to say that she was, like, using a giant knife to, like, poke the ventilation holes.
Nope.
Okay.
Yeah, like, to cut open the plastic to eat her food.
Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
She's a weirdo.
Real weird. Sorry.
No, you're okay. So, she's working on her thesis because she's a grad student. And she's working on it a while, but she seems eventually kind of to get bored and starts, like, looking around. And you see, like, almost every... I guess they're all just head level, but, like, almost every inch of the wall, head level, is pictures of her, but they're all like super photography and whatnot. Like multiple hers standing in one photo, but just doing different things and stuff. And because her ex-boyfriend is a photographer, you see. So he's just taken a million fucking pictures of her.
But
no one else
on her walls. Her ex-boyfriend?
Yeah. So she lives there with her ex-boyfriend. They just broke up.
Good.
Yes. Which, to me, I was like, they explained that the building she's in is ridiculously old. It was a middle school that had been converted into apartment buildings.
What?
In Boston.
How?
I have no idea.
Tell me how.
I don't know.
Classrooms into, like, individual housing or something?
Yeah.
Because... Woof.
Yeah, and they're, like, ginormous, apparently. That or they're tearing down walls to build new ones.
But if it's an old Boston school, like, that's got to be made of, like, brick.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So, like, okay.
I don't know.
We don't need to get that far into it.
That part just didn't make sense to me. I was like, honestly, if you're going to do fucking anything with it, turn it into a new school.
Yeah.
Like...
Or like maybe a gym.
Yeah. I'm like, you know how much more plumbing you have to put in there for that?
For every house to be Yeah.
It'd be cheaper
up to code?
to tear the building down, build a new one.
Probably.
Like, I don't know. Anyway, so I'm sitting here like, okay, it's an old apartment. It's like, it's not great, okay?
Yeah.
However, she's a grad student and doesn't go to work.
Okay.
How are people living in these places when they have no money?
Yeah.
But then I was like, okay, well, her boyfriend was a photographer. It was probably his apartment first,
Maybe
you know.
She has scholarships.
Right? And so, like, he's the one probably making the money for it. But, like, the whole time I'm just like, he's not that good. So, like, what's he making money off of, you know? Maybe he's got a side job or whatever, but, like...
And, like, I know that people have savings.
Yeah.
But, like, as soon as I save up a decent amount of money, I blow... I don't know how people save money.
Yeah.
Like,
you blow it on vacations.
Like, I just saved up $10,000 to do this thing. And I'm like, how?
Right?
What am I missing out on?
I know. I'm like, we have our savings, but we had that for, like, the down payment of the house. And, like, that was it. So, like,
true.
You know, but... Yeah, so she's looking around at all these pictures and stuff, and you see a couple of her sitting with a guy, but you don't get to see his face because it's artistic, you know? Like, that's the point of the picture. Okay. It's artistic. So we don't get to know what Chris looks like for the entire fucking movie, okay?
What?
Yes, Chris
we just know about him and he lives there, but we don't get to see him?
Yes, well, he doesn't live there right now because they just broke up. Oh. So he's gone right now.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So she's decides, okay, I'm kind of bored. I'm just going to call my mom back so that she'll shut up and leave me alone, kind of a thing. And she calls her mom, and her mom wakes up, and she's like, hello? And she's like, hi, Mom. It's me. Just like that.
Why?
I don't know. And she goes, Nicole?
How old is she? A grad student? So, like, she's early 20s?
Early 20s.
Okay.
Mid-20s.
Hey, Mom.
Yeah. She's like, hi, Mom, it's me. And she's like, Nicole? And she's like, yeah.
No, the other one.
like, as far as I'm aware, you are her only child.
Yeah.
Like, and so for your mother to be like, what? Like, who are you?
She's tired. Like, who doesn't look at their caller ID?
Yeah.
Before they answer the phone. And
she's like, I'm sorry, were you sleeping? And she was like, no. And she's like, okay, maybe a little. And I'm like, why is this the conversation?
Why is this relevant?
My mother's dead, and I could have a better conversation with her than this. Like,
well, you would have a very interesting conversation with her.
Yes, if I could record that, I would make millions. Mother, if you hear me. So she's like, oh, I didn't realize how late it was. And her mom's like, what time is it? She's like, it's 1:30 at my time. It's 12:30 your time. Because her mother lives in Iowa, and Nicole lives in Boston, right? Because she's going to grad school. And she's like, sorry, I didn't even realize what time it was. I was just working on my thesis and stuff. And she was like, oh, okay, well, how is everything? And so now they're just trying to have a normal conversation. She's like, it's fine. Everything's fine. And her mom's like, well, you know, I wish you would call me more often. You're an adult now, Nicole. You need to be calling your mother. I'm like, that's what a teenager is supposed to be doing.
Yeah,
like
she's an adult and she can take care of herself.
Yeah. And like,
it's just a mom trying to get her daughter to call her
more
often.
I don't. Which to me means she is the only child.
Like, yeah, she's like, there's no one else to keep me company, Nicole.
Right? And I'm like, but you know she's a grad student. You know she's busy. Like,
chill out.
Yeah, chill out. And I mean, like, I could totally see, like, you calling and being like, it's been like a month since you've called me. Are you alive? You know? But as far as I'm aware, she just hasn't called her in like a week or something. But like,
yeah.
Anyway. But she... Ooh, drives me crazy. So then she's like, well, how's Chris? And she's like, I wouldn't know. What do you mean you wouldn't know?
Fucking clickbait!
Yes.
Stop that shit! Oh, that drives me nuts!
Yeah.
Oh my god.
And I'm like so annoyed about it. And like, I get it, like your breakup is fresh and you don't super want to talk about it, but she's like, I wouldn't know. And her mother's like, what does that mean? And she's like, oh, because he's gone. Gone? Gone where?
Oh my god.
Gone as in, we broke up, Mom, okay? And I'm like,
bad cold chills.
Yes.
Goosebump shivers.
Yeah. And like, it's so bad. And she's just like, oh, and as she's like talking to her mom, she's looking at a picture of her and Chris, which does have his face on it, but we don't get to see it because she like slams it face down, right?
Of course.
But if you're quick enough to pause it like I am, you can see who it is.
Nice.
But I'm not going to tell you who it is.
Okay.
Because we do get to see him at the end of the movie.
It's important, sure.
Yes, it's important. Her mother goes, oh no, well, this is terrible. Well, was it something you did? And Nicole was like, something I did?
What the fuck?
Why does everything always have to be my fault? And her mom goes, Nicole, he was the best boyfriend you've ever had. I'm sure you've overreacted to something like you always do. No, you have to do everything you can to get back together with him. Tell him you're sorry. And I was just like, you have a bitch mom. Like, I don't fucking care. For the rest of the movie, bitch mother.
Yeah.
Like, bitch mother.
Yeah, like, be supportive in this time, and then maybe later, when it's not so fresh, you can be like, so what really happened?
Exactly. So Nicole starts, like, screaming at him, or screaming at her, and she's like, tell him I'm sorry. You act like you even know something about this. What about what he did? You know what? Forget it. Just go to bed, and, like, hangs up on her, right?
Cool.
And then storms off to her bedroom, slams the phone down, and is like, oh, bitch! And then, like, she's such a bad actress that she looks upset, but she's not upset. If that, you know, like, she's like, oh, hands over the face, and then, like, normal face. Yeah. Nothing. Like, nothing whatsoever, right? Okay. So she grabs the phone again and dials her back. And this is before, like, speed dial, I'm guessing.
Yeah. Early days.
But I'm like, I'm pretty sure I had speed dial back in 2005.
Maybe she doesn't have her on speed dial.
Maybe.
I don't know.
But she dials her mom, right? And it rings for a second, and then it picks up to a voicemail from someone named Christine, and she goes, oh crap, I dialed the wrong number, and hangs up, right? Okay. And then dials the correct number, calls her mom, and her mom answers, and she's like, Nicole, and she's like, how could you think it was my fault? You don't even know what's going on. I know you think he's perfect, but he's not, okay? He had his problems and stuff. And her mom was like, okay, listen, Nicole, calm down. Go to bed. We'll talk again tomorrow. Like, okay? And she's like, okay. And then gets off the phone with her. And I was just, like, exhausted by that phone call. Mostly because I was just like, you're both bitches, first of all.
Yeah. Like, dysfunctional family.
So dysfunctional. And so then when she hangs up, she goes to stand up, but the phone rings. So she picks up and she's like, Mom. And then she hears this guy's super suave voice being like, I'm not your mother. And she's like, who is this? And he was like, you called here. And she's like, no, I didn't. He's like, yeah, I know you called here because I have I have caller ID. Mm-hmm. And she was like, what? And he's like, well, the machine picked up. And she goes, oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. Like, I misdialed you and I was trying to call someone else.
Did she forget that she just called someone 3 seconds ago?
So. Yeah, I think she just was not paying attention. And she's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disturb you. And he's like, you didn't disturb me. And she's like, okay, well, I have to go now because I have someone on hold. And he's like, no, you don't. And she's like, yeah, I do. And he's like, well, I think I'm way more interesting than whoever he is. And she starts kind of like smiling a little, you know, like, well, how do you know it's a he? Whoa. Right? And he just kind of starts like, well, come on, you and I both know no one's actually on hold. And she's like, okay, yeah, no one is on hold. And he's like, see, doesn't it feel so much better to be free? And she's like, what? Okay, well, I still have to go anyway. And he's like, why? And she's like, because you're a really weird man and my boyfriend might get jealous. And he's like, well, we wouldn't want that, would we? And she's like, yeah, well, it's been real, and hangs up on him. And she leaves to go do laundry in the basement. And, you know, obviously has to take her perky nips with her. And so she rides down this elevator all the way into the basement. And the whole time she's riding down, it's maybe 3 floors, okay? Because she's got, like, she lives on the 2nd floor, so she has to go from her floor to the 1st floor.
So there's an elevator in here.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In this old school. Apartment.
Right?
Okay.
Yes. So she gets to the basement and gets out. Like, the whole time she's like, come on already. Like,
they filmed that whole thing?
Yeah, like they're going down with it. I know. So she gets down to the basement, and as she's walking past, she sees this door off to her right that has windows on either side of it, but you can't see inside. They're kind of like not newspapered over, but the equivalent of a newspaper over kind of a thing. Okay. So obviously it's supposed to be a shut door that you can't enter, right? Which is, it's fine. It's a building that you're not allowed to go, or a door you're not allowed to go into. It's cool. It's whatever. But she kind of like has one of those like moments staring at it and then keeps walking. But the door, we see it ever so slightly kind of creep open.
Oh boy.
Does that matter later? Not really. Oh. It's not like
maybe it's just a ghost.
It's not a ghost. I mean, if it is a ghost, it's the building's ghost being like, hello, that bitch. Like, because, I mean, that room is important later, but, like, the fact that the door creeped open by itself is, like,
just spooky spook.
It's just supposed to make you weirded out. And, it makes sense in her nightmares she has later, but, like, this is not a nightmare. So, like, anyway. So she goes down into the laundry room, and as she gets in there, she sees one of the washing machines just, like, rocking super bad because it's off-centered, right? Yeah. So she kind of looks around and sees no one in there, so she puts down her basket, opens it up, and starts, like a normal person would just kind of move the clothes over to one side and shut the lid again, right?
Right.
No. She starts pulling the clothes kind of out.
Why?
I don't know. And
just
then
rebalance.
Yes. And she sees this, I can't tell because it's early 2000s. I can't tell if it was a bathing suit or if it was underwear or if it's one of those like strapless bras, okay. For little booby girls because I don't know what those look like.
I have no experience with that.
No, but like they're all like they're the most horrendous polka dot. Probably be cute on like a 12-year-old, but like not for a grown adult. Polka dots, like green and blue polka dot. Okay, it's actually kind of a cute-ish pattern.
That sounds like early 2000s.
Yeah, but like I could not figure out what it was, right? And it just looked like the weirdest. Like it looked like swimsuit fabric. So she's like holding it up way too close to her face because this is alien Nicole right here. Yeah. And like normal people don't do that. No. Normal people do not.
Normal people don't look at other people's underwear.
No, they don't do that. But she suddenly looks up and there's this girl standing there and I call her bitch neighbor because we never learned her name. Okay. And she's like, "What are you doing?" And Nicole was like, "Oh, are these yours? I'm sorry. It was off balance."
Is this really how she talks?
Through part of the movie. Like, she has this kind of like breathy voice, a lot of it. I hate her. And so the girl, like, or the bitch neighbor, like, snatches it back, throws it back in there and, like, closes it, turns it on. She's like, "Guess it's working now." And so Nicole's like, "Right, well, I'm going back upstairs," and, like, grabs her laundry and clearly doesn't want to be in the same room as this lady. Yeah. And so she goes to leave and she's like, "What about your laundry?" And she's like, "I'll do it later."
Mind your business.
Right? But as she's, like, going to leave, bitch neighbor's like, "Haven't seen Chris in a little while."
Good.
And, yeah.
What? And, get out of here.
Yeah. Nicole, like, turns to look at her, and then that's it. That's the end of the scene.
Okay.
Yeah, it just cuts, like, right there.
Why?
I don't know. It has the weirdest cuts of scenes. I don't understand the cuts of it, but, like...
Cool.
Anyway. Oh, the scene changes. She's upstairs again in her apartment, and she's putting her clothes down in her bedroom. And she goes over and she sees that her closet door is open, so she just goes and shuts it. And as she's shutting it, the phone rings, so she runs over and picks it up. And all she gets is Mr. Suave again, who's like, "Is that really your name, Freeman?"
What?
Because her name, N. Freeman, shows up on the caller ID.
Oh, right. So, I forget about that.
Yes. And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Why are you still calling me?" And he's like, "'Cause I'm intrigued by you, your voice, your name." And she's like, "What's so intriguing about my voice and my name?" Right? And I'm like, stop flirting with this guy. You don't know who the fuck he is.
He is a serial killer.
He is, and you don't know. And he's just like, "You just have a nice voice. It's easy on the ears." And I'm like, are we listening to the same woman talking?
Right.
Because... And he asks if N. Freeman is truly free. Is she a free agent?
What? Is he an alien too?
Kind of. I don't fucking know.
Why is he weird? He's being weird.
Yeah, you'll see.
I don't like it.
So she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, are you a free agent?" She's like, "No, I have a boyfriend." And he's like, "Oh, you do, huh?" And she's like, "Yeah, I do." And he's like, "Let me talk to him." And she's like, "Well, he's not here right now," which it's almost 2 a.m. at this point. Okay. Mm-hmm. And she's like, "No, he's not here right now." He goes, "Well, it's pretty late to not be home. He shouldn't be out cheating on you." Like, he's just already assuming all this stuff, you know? Okay. And she's like, "You know what? I'm really kind of done talking to you right now." And he's like, "Oh, come on. Just tell me what N stands for. Or I could just keep calling you N." And she's like, "I don't want you calling me at all. Goodbye." And hangs up on him. And he immediately calls back. And she, like, doesn't answer it. She doesn't want to. But then her voicemail picks up after a couple of rings. And it, like, reads off her phone number. I mean, it's her voice reading off her phone number. Yeah. And she's like, "You've reached this number. It's Chris and she snatches the phone up really quick before smart. He can hear it, right? And so he's like, "So your boyfriend's name is Chris. His name on your message? That's true commitment. Don't you want to know my name?" And she's like, "No, stop calling me." And he's like, "It's Joe, as in just your average Joe."
Okay.
Yeah.
Well.
And I'm like...
If you didn't have me convinced that you were a serial killer before, you do now.
Right? And she's like, listen, Joe, I don't want to talk to you anymore. Lose my number. And he's like, I can't. I've already memorized it. And then hangs up.
Ew.
Yeah.
Ew.
I know.
Can you get a restraining order on someone over the phone?
Not if you don't know who he is, right? So she's a little startled and just like unplugs her answering machine, which I'm like, good girl. Smart girl.
Yep.
See, that's normal, Nicole.
Yes.
That's normal person, Nicole, right there. So she's unable, like, she goes to go to bed, but she can't sleep. So she gets up and she gets a glass of water and she starts peering out one of her windows. And she can see right into bitch neighbor's apartment, okay, who is getting undressed for the night, like getting changed so she can get into pajamas.
She can see through a window in her house. Mm-hmm. She can see into bitch neighbor's apartment. Mm-hmm. So
but it's like the same
from each other.
But it's the same building complex.
Okay.
I have no idea. This middle school complex, like apartment complex, makes no sense.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we love spying, so proceed.
Yes, so she's spying, and you totally see more boobs. Right. And I'm like, why? But she's like staring at this girl, and like to the point.
Why do you assume it's a boy?
Yeah. Like, and just. And just like staring at this girl. And later you find out kind of why she's staring at her, but like overly creepily staring at her. Yeah. Like where I would be like, this fucking bitch kind of a thing. Like, oh yeah, get naked in your fucking window, you bitch, you know? Like, because she doesn't like her, but the way she's staring at her is like, yeah, get naked in your window, bitch. Like, it's so bad.
So that's alien Nicole.
Yeah, that's alien Nicole. But she also, like, the way she holds her glasses and stuff, and like the way she just kind of peers out, it's just alien Nicole is being weird. Anyway, so she then is all of a sudden dreaming and is walking past the same door in the basement, but she's wearing this like blue, what I would have assumed was a 2005 prom dress, kind of like, or not, maybe not prom dress, like preference. Okay. Kind of a thing, you know, like not overly fancy, but nice, but as she, in her dream, she's walking past that door in the basement that is locked. I guess it's locked, or just the room they're not supposed to go into, right? But then the door creaks open.
Of course.
And she's just kind of staring at it, and you can hear Joe's voice just like creepily saying things and laughing as she walks in. But we don't get to see her walk all the way in.
And that's like a voiceover?
Yeah.
Okay.
Like, it's just his voice just like, no. Like, just talk. I don't even remember what he was saying because it was so echoey and like dreamy, you know?
Okay.
But she wakes up before she can get inside. So the next morning she gets up and gets ready for the day. She goes into the bathroom and she wears this nightshirt a couple of times in the movie. Mm-hmm. And it is the ugliest shirt ever. Like, it doesn't look like it's comfortable. It doesn't look like one you would sleep in. It's just like these super thin spaghetti straps. Okay. And then like the stiffest cotton fabric you can think of, embroidered around the top with a ruffled edge, okay? The ruffles go under your arms.
Ew.
Yeah. It is horrendous.
Wow. It's
horrendous. I hate it so much. And it's got this like bow with really long ribbon in the front. It's awful.
What?
It's awful.
Okay.
And she wears it a couple of times in the movie, and I hate it. And it's, of course, Nicole and her nipples for that. Yeah. So, anyway, so she goes to her bathroom, and she's just kind of staring at herself in the mirror, and she looks over, and you see 2 toothbrushes, right? And obviously one of the... this is going on really long already. Sorry. She looks over, and you see 2 toothbrushes, and she takes Chris's toothbrush and throws it away. And you're like, yeah, Nicole, moving on. Get going, Nicole. Move on, right? But then she goes to the window again to creep on her neighbor, and the neighbor catches her this time, and she kind of like, oh no.
Okay.
I hope she didn't actually see me, kind of a look on her face, right? And she also like has her hair in these 2 little like very kiddish pigtails, and I hate it.
Like on the side of her head?
Not like kind of lower in the back-ish.
I guess that's very
like,
2000s.
Yeah, it was...
Did she have like the short hair?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Those are cute.
Yeah, but everything about her makes it seem like she's supposed to be this like sweet, innocent little boo-boo lips, and I want to slap her face. And so I just
slap the nipples clean off.
Right? You don't deserve those nipples. So those are not nipples of a girl who's trying to look innocent, okay?
No.
But she decides to make oatmeal. And my thing is that she's had to have been living in this apartment for a while, okay? For quite a while, all right? And when you've been living in a place for, like, because I've lived in apartments and crappy places like that, if there's something that you have to do a certain way, it just becomes second nature to do it. And she doesn't do that here, okay? Like, she's had to have been living in this apartment for a while.
It's like, let's show you how clunky it is.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And anyway, so she decides to make microwavable oatmeal, okay? And she puts it in the microwave, and here's alien Nicole, because she leans as close to the microwave as possible and is so deliberate with pushing every single button. It looks like an alien glanced at the instructions once, threw it away, and was like, let's do this. I've never used a microwave before.
Now, how do we do this?
Yeah. And she's like all close to it, like leaning like this, and then like pushes the button.
What?
Yeah, to start it. But apparently, because it's an old building, you can't have the microwave going at the same time that all the lights are on because it's too much electricity going to an apartment.
I've lived in that house
Exactly,
before.
Yes. So, but I'm like, but this should be second nature to you.
Yeah. Maybe she's one of those that never uses the microwave.
She doesn't know what a fucking TV, so there's that.
Well, yeah.
So she, the power goes out, and she's like,
again?
And gets a flashlight to go downstairs to flip her breaker, right? Because that is what adults do. But as she's riding down the elevator, alien Nicole has the flashlight in her hand pressed against her cheek. Like, holding it like...
What?
Fucking hell, I don't understand this girl. I don't understand how she does anything. But then she gets off the elevator, she's walking towards the breaker room, and the whole time she's like jingling her keys, and she's just like nervous. Like she's nervous to go in there. And I'm like, listen, I get spooky basements, okay? But like, as far as we're aware, she has no reason to be afraid of anything in her apartment complex. Like, there's no, I mean, unless you're just a fucking pansy ass bitch, okay? Like,
maybe,
you know, maybe. And like, listen, okay, when I was living in my spooky house growing up as a kid, I didn't like going down into the basement for no reason. But I was a child. Yeah, I'm an adult now. I go down into my basement all the time. Yeah, but you know, and like, it's just. Ugh. So she just does weird things. Anyway, so she goes in there, flips on the light, and she's heading over to the breaker. She's about halfway there when the light flips off, and she's like, hey! And the building's maintenance man opens up the door, and he's like, who's in there? Why are you in here? And she was like, and he flips on the lights, and she's like, the power went off on my in my apartment again. And he goes, oh, well, let me see if I can fix that for you. So he goes in, flips her breaker switch back over, and he's like, there you go, fixed. And she's like, well, can you fix it so it doesn't do this again? And he's like, we're in an old building. What do you want me to do? Like, no, just do it, you know, like, whatever. And so she's like, thanks for nothing, and, like, goes to leave. Which, I mean, like, yeah. But I'm like, she could have flipped her own breaker. But, like, he was like, let me see what I can do for you. And, like, off, anyway. But then he goes, you know, I haven't seen Chris in a while.
Why, how big is this place?
It's at least... like 4 floors.
So you shouldn't, like, everyone shouldn't know everyone.
Yeah, I think it's actually like 6 or something. But what? Like, I don't know.
What is this school?
I can't remember how many floors there were. There's at least 4 or 5. It could be 6, but there's at least 4 or 5.
Okay, these are really friendly people.
Yeah.
I don't know any of my neighbors.
Right?
Like, no.
I know a couple of them. I can't tell you their names.
No.
Anyway, so she's like, how do you know about that? And he's like, well, you know, I just haven't seen him around. And she's like, okay, and goes to leave. And he goes, you know, he likes looking in people's windows. What? And she's like, turns around and kind of looks at him, and he's like, I've seen him doing it. Ew. And it, like, kind of like got this like creepy look on his face. But I'm like, personally, I felt like he should have been like, you know, he likes looking in people's windows.
Yeah, like,
I've caught him doing it. Yeah. But like, she gives him this like super like pouty lips stink eye. It's like the first time in the movie she looks upset about anything. And I'm like, I would be way more upset about bitch neighbor than I would be about building's maintenance man telling me shit like that. Like,
but also she likes to look in windows too, so they're a good match apparently.
Yes. And so she storms back off to her apartment, and then she alien turns off every light switch in her house because it's very deliberate of like flick.
I want the behind the scenes with like the direction from the director who's being like, okay, get a real good close up of that microwave. Yeah. Yeah, we need to know how to operate the microwave.
Yes.
Okay, we have your face and the microwave. Push the button.
Yeah.
Okay, next button.
Yeah.
Like,
it's so bad. It's so, like, I will, if I can cut a scene from that, I don't know how to.
Yeah.
But if I can cut that scene, like, and she just, so she gets back to go and, like, turns off all the lights in her house and goes to go turn on the microwave. But she just does this, like, sucking on her bottom lip, like, please work. I really want my microwave oatmeal. Like,
I'm annoyed just listening to this.
Yeah. And she goes to, like, push it, but, like, she's so slow about doing it that the door, or her buzzer rings. Like, you know, the buzzers that they have downstairs that you can, buzz in and stuff. And that goes off, and she's like, and then goes to listen to it, but she can't hear what the guy's talking about, so she just decides to go downstairs. Oh, good. And so she goes to the door, which they keep locked. Killed. Yeah. But they keep locked, so you have to, like, let someone in. Yeah. And she's like, can I help you? And he's like, oh, I'm Detective Frank Harvey, and I have some questions for you. Can I talk to you upstairs? And she's like, questions? About what? Like, suddenly so...
Can I talk to you upstairs?
So he's like, yeah, let me talk to you upstairs. And she's like, okay. So then they're upstairs. And they walk in and all the lights are still off. And he's like, do you always keep it so dark in here? And she's like, no, the building's old, so I have to keep the lights off if I want to use the microwave. And he's like, yeah, I know it's an old building. I used to go here. And she's like, you knew someone who lived here? And he was like, no, it was my middle school before. Wow. Which the thing to me is that he says he's from Boston, that he went to middle school. He does not sound... It's my phone. He does not sound like he's from Boston. Like he's from Boston at all. Like, nothing about the Lad School Red Sox. Nothing. I see nothing about it. Like,
you don't talk about the Red Sox. No. You didn't grow up in Boston.
No. Like, there's nothing that indicates that he's from... Which, I mean, would be fine if they didn't say he went to middle school there. Yeah. So, like, and I didn't catch that till the second time I was watching it, that I was like, oh, where the fuck is his accent? It makes sense later in the movie, but I can't tell you why right now. Anyway. Oh, boy. But I was like, you couldn't even try. Anyway. So then he starts looking at all the weirdo pictures, and he's like, is this your roommates? And she's like, it's my boyfriend's. I mean, my ex-boyfriend's. And he's like, okay. And she's like, he was a photographer. And he's like, all right, what do you do? She's like, I'm a grad student. He's like, okay, cool. Listen, do you know a woman named Christine that lives in, I think it was like, where was it? Oakland, Nevada, or somewhere. Overton.
Nevada?
Overton, Nevada.
You say Nevada?
Nevada. It's the same way. No, it's tomato for me.
Oh my god, something new.
Well, that's how they say it, is Nevada. So, like, that's how I've been saying it all day. Because that's how they've all been saying it. So. Wow.
Okay. Sorry.
It's Nevada.
It's Nevada. Really way off topic. Okay, sorry.
So he's like, do you know a Christine from Overton, Nevada? And I'm going to say it correct now. But they would say Nevada. So, like, anyway, and she's like, no, I don't know who that is. And he's like, well, really? You called her last night, and then she called you back 3 times. And she was like, oh, no, that wasn't her. It was just some guy, probably her boyfriend or something.
Some serial killer.
He was like, a guy, and she's like, yeah, I misdialed and I got their voicemail, and then he called me back and he was just chatting for a while. I figured he was bored or something. And he was like, okay, well, and she's like, did he file a complaint about me, because he was the one bugging me? And he's like, no,
actually
Christine lived at that house. Mm-hmm. And she's like, lived? And she was murdered last night. Yep. And she's like, what? And they're like, and the police chief from there called and said that they found your number on her on her phone records, and wanted us to check you out to see if you knew anything about what happened, especially because the phone calls happened during the time of the murder.
Oh my Lord.
Yeah. Whoop, so she called, interrupting a murder.
Wow.
Yeah.
He was like, all right, I'll call her back.
Yeah. And she's like, what? Oh my gosh, okay. And he's like, did he give you his name or anything? And she's like, no, he just said his name was Joe, did a whole spiel about it, just your average Joe. And he's like, do you remember anything else? She's like, no, not really. And he's like, okay, well, here's my card, call me if you think of anything else. And she's like, okay, thanks. I'm so, like, oh, bye, all creeped out. And he leaves. And then she goes back to sitting on her couch, because alien Nicole sits with her sneakers on, cross-legged.
How dare.
On a couch.
Why? In your own home.
In your own home.
Take off your shoes.
Yep.
Okay.
but sneakers.
Yeah. And cross-legged.
Because she's working on her thesis, you see. And she drops her pencil and it goes kind of in between the couch. Yeah. But from our film point, we see it sitting there in between the couch. But alien Nicole has to get in there. Yeah. Okay. And just starts like in there and pulls out the pencil, but also pulls out a very similar looking polka dot little number. Oh. But this time it's like orange and yellow polka dot. So it's not exactly the same as the other one, but it's the same kind of style. So I don't know if it's like a top with the bottoms and they're like that the two. Be horrendous. Yeah, it's bad. And I mean, like, it could be a cute pattern. It really could be for like a 12-year-old. Yeah. And like, anyway, so she like pulls out whatever the top is I don't know what it is because like you can't even get a good look at it. You just see it's some kind of fabric and you know it's not hers. Yeah. And she's just like,
he is cheating on me.
Yeah. So she decides to take a bath and...
I love that distressed people in movies always get in the bath or the shower. Yeah. They're like, I'm so upset. Yeah.
And she's got the candles lit and stuff. Oh, and she's sitting there and just kind of dunks her head under and then just keeps like staring up at the ceiling just like... boo-boo eyes, but never cries. Like, I would be crying. Like, if she were crying right then, I would be like, oh, I get the boo-boo eyes, honey. Yeah. Oh, like, you're okay. I'm sorry he's a cheater. Yeah. Oh, But, like...
Do we ever find out why they broke up?
Yes. Okay. So, yeah. So, she takes a bath and she gets out and she hears the phone ring again. So, she answers it and Joe's suave voice goes, hello, Nicole. And she's like, how do you know my name? And he goes...
First of all, don't do that because you just...
Confirmed. Yeah. Yeah, you just confirmed that. Yeah. And he starts going off about area codes and blah, 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 and only so many N Freemans in her area and blah, 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 and just like all this stuff about area codes and whatnot. And she's just like, she yells at him to stop calling and to leave her alone and then hangs up. But he calls right back and is like, I don't like being hung up on. I find it rude.
Oh, no.
And she kind of calls him out for killing that woman that,
that's a good thing to do.
Yes. And he was like, oh, she was a whore. She got what she deserved. And she was like, okay. And they just kind of go back and forth for way too long about how he's like, you're the one who called me first. And she's like, I didn't call you. It was an accident. And he's like, we both know it wasn't an accident. You meant to call me. And she's like, no, it wasn't. Blah, blah, blah. And just for a good while goes on way too long with that. And then her just like being like, don't call me again. So he gets annoyed and hangs up the phone. So she star 69s him. Okay. And writes down and this is back when it didn't just ring to the phone. Yeah. It would tell you that the phone number was.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I know, yeah. And so it would write, maybe it's actually not a thing and maybe they just did it for the movie. Because anytime I star 69, it would just call the phone back. Yeah. But, like, it told her what the number was. So she wrote it down really quick and then dialed it. Uh-huh. And then, like, this woman, like, immediately answers after, like, one ring. And she's like, hello? And Nicole's like, who is this? And she's like, you called me. Yeah. And so Nicole goes, is this number? And she's like, yeah. And so Nicole freaks out. Uh-huh. And it's just like, oh my gosh, you need to get out of your house right this second. She's like, what? What are you talking about? She's like, you need to get out of your house. Listen to me. You need to leave. You need to get out of there. Blah, 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 blah. Just like goes off for a while. And the lady is like, is this a joke? And she's like, no, listen, a man just called me from your house. You need to get out of your house. He's already killed someone before in Overton. Right? It just goes off. Whoa. Yeah, there's a lot of... And all of a sudden we hear a little girl say, Mommy, there's a man in the hallway. No! And then the mom drops the phone and starts, get away from her! And then you hear a bunch of scuffling and screaming and, no, leave her alone! And like, all this stuff. Fucking and Joe. Nicole is like, like crying into the phone, listening to the whole thing going on, right? Like sobbing into the phone instead of like hanging up and calling 911.
Yeah, I'd be like, hey, police. Go get the other police because he's there. Yeah. I guess she doesn't know where he is.
Well, no, but she has the phone number. True. So they can they could look up the phone number, you know, right? But like, anyway. So she listens to the whole thing before we fade to the next scene. And Frank is Detective Frank, I'm going to call him Frank for the rest of the movie, is standing in her apartment on the phone and on his cell phone. And he's just kind of talking. And she's just kind of sitting there a little traumatized back in her big oversized coat and stuff. Yeah. And he says that it was a call that came from a home in Colorado, and that they've sent the police over right now to go investigate it and stuff, right? And she's like, they're already dead. Like, they already are. And he's like, you don't know that, Nicole. Immediately gets a phone call back on his cell phone.
They're dead.
And he's like, okay, so he killed them. And she was like, I told you. And he's like, there's nothing you could have done, Nicole. And I'm like, it's true.
Yeah.
Besides call the cops. She did try.
Yeah.
She tried to get them out of the house. And like, to be honest, it doesn't matter how quickly you call the police.
No. He
was already stabbing them. So like, they already dead, you know? And then he offers to stay in his car outside of the apartment to be close again if he calls again, right? And she's like, okay, I'd appreciate that. So he goes to bed, and again, alien Nicole is sitting on her bed, okay? But is sitting up on her pillows, her butt on her pillows, okay? With her knees up like this, like up to her chest with her arms like this. Fucking, she just is so awkward.
It's like someone posed her all weird.
Yeah,
like,
and she's just like not even hugging her legs. Like, just, she's so fucking weird. Anyway, so then she gets up and she sees that her closet door has kind of creaked open again. So she goes over and she uses her whole body weight. And I'm saying this because it's weird. Alien Nicole uses her whole body weight to push it shut. And for a good minute there, because she did it the first time too, I thought, oh, it's probably one of those doors that like sticks really weird. And so you have to push it hard to get it to shut. And I thought, oh, nothing of it later. But she shuts it with her foot later. Like, just goes over and like, peep, shuts it.
Okay.
Anyway, so she goes to lay back down, and then she goes back to having her nightmare, right? And in the dream, she's back downstairs, and she walks through the door, and we see it's a large, empty pool, like totally no water in it, right?
Okay.
Empty pool, and we hear Joe's creepy laughter echoing around, and we hear the little girl's voice of, Mommy, there's a man in the hallway, like just echo, echo, echo. And yeah, suddenly Nicole wakes up, and she's wearing her ugly fucking night shirt again. And she wears it a few more times. I'm like, I just hate it. I want to burn that thing. Yeah. Whoever designed that shirt, I hope you're drug out into the street and shot, because
yeah, exactly.
How dare you?
How dare you?
How dare you? I am personally offended by that shirt. And then when she wakes up in the morning, the door's open, so she shuts it with her foot. And she goes out to the living room, and she sees Frank's already standing in her living room. How he got in her, I don't fucking. Anyway, okay. But as she's there, there's this police IT man laying on the floor, just phone cords this, and then system this, and I'll run through, and he's just talking and talking and talking about how they're tapping her phone and it'll trace the guy's location. Right. But he is like going off about how it works, right? And Frank is standing there like, I don't fucking care. I shoot people and that's what I do. Yeah. Okay, like, you know, he's like, you the smart guy. I'm the dumb, like, muscle guy, right? Which he was in that muscle. Anyway, so she's like, so this, you know, like, this is gonna trace his calls and stuff. And he's like, yeah, all you have to do is like, pick up the phone. And she's like, okay. And he's like, oh, and you can pick up any phone in the apartment. So, like, and she's got like the rotary phone in her kitchen, and then she's got a couple of cordless phones. And I'm like, I had one phone in my house. Yeah. And then my sister got one to have in her room, but she still was only allowed to be on it for so long, kind of a thing. Like,
yeah, I think when we had cordless phones, we had 2 of them at one point. But, like, why do you need 3 of them?
Yeah, I have no idea.
Okay.
And she didn't own a cell phone.
Okay.
So, like, weird. I don't know. Everyone else had a cell phone, but, like, anyway.
She's a student.
She can't afford that. She just lives in her apartment. So, and then Frank kind of, like, rushes him out the door so that he doesn't keep talking to her, because he just keeps saying the same things over and over again. And he's like, well, I guess I'll just hang around for him to call, kind of a thing. And she's like, okay. And now she's all like dressed and like totally looks like, oh, there's a boy in my house, kind of wearing out clothes now. Boy. Right? And is wearing a bra, no nipples.
Wow.
Yep. I mean, you know they're there, like, ever so slightly they're kind of there, because her bra's not that great, but like you're like, wow, she's trying. Yeah. She's like, girls, this is my job, not yours. Like, you know,
step back.
Right? And so she just keeps like giving him the flirty eyes. And I'm like, Nicole, you would fuck a tree at this point, because you're fucking a dude's voice on the phone. You're wanting to fuck the cop. Like, you're just...
She's broken up, don't you know?
Yes, don't you know? And I'm like, which is fine. You know, like, bounce back sex is whatever. Like,
yeah. So
they're just kind of chatting for a little bit and stuff. And he's like, well, I guess I'll just watch TV for a little bit. And she's like, I don't have a TV, you know? And he's like, what? She's like, I'm a grad student. And he's like, okay, I guess I'll read a book then. But, like, all of her books seem to be, like, college textbooks. Okay. So, like, She has no real books in her house besides college textbooks. And so he falls asleep very quickly reading one of those, which he also slept in his car. So, like, I don't blame him for falling asleep on her couch. But he wakes up a little while later. She's sitting there, like, with her back to him and just kind of keeps having this, like, smile, like this, like... I hate her. This smile thing that she's doing because he's waking up and he's like, oh my gosh.
She's like, here's my chance. Here we go.
Right?
Waking up.
And she's like, you snored. And he's like, sorry, did that bug you? She's like, no, wasn't a big deal.
It was cute.
Yeah. Like, and so they start chatting. And he's like, what are you working on? And she's like, my thesis. And he's like, what is your thesis about? And I didn't even bother to write it down. But it's some kind of psychological hullabaloo, right?
Of course.
Yeah. And the phone rings and she's like, oh no, what do I do? And he's like, answer it, go ahead. And so she answers it and immediately, okay, they keep telling her a couple of times, all she has to do is keep him on the phone so that it can trace him. Okay. Yeah. Because it takes it takes a good couple of minutes to figure out where that phone is coming from. Okay. Yeah. Not in this movie. Okay. It's immediate. They know exactly where the phone call is fucking coming from, right? So the phone rings. She picks it up. His cell phone rings because it's the IT guy who has nothing better to do with his life than do this, and calls it. He's like, I got the number, man. It's in Iowa. Blah, 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 blah. And she's like, Mom? And he's like, dude, don't worry about it. It's just her mom. So they hang up, like they have to get off the phone and stuff. And she's like, Mom, I have to go. I have a friend over. And he's kind of like getting off the phone and is like kind of listening, but obviously not wanting to interrupt her conversation. And he's such a better actor than she is. And she's like, yes, it's a male friend. Okay.
Oh my gosh,
I have to
Mom.
Go. And he's kind of like, male friend, kind of smirky smile and stuff. And the first time I watched the movie, I was like, I don't like him. But the more I watched it, I was like, oh, Frank, like he was just, oh, Frank, not great, but not awful. Like he's like my second favorite character of the movie. We haven't met my favorite character yet. Anyway, so she offers him a drink, and he's like, oh, I can't drink while I'm on duty, but I'll have a soda, and they're sitting there and they're chatting for a good while, and he's like, so why did you break up with your boyfriend? And she's like, it wasn't just one thing, it was a lot of things, but he wasn't always faithful. And she was like, he's like, oh, yeah, that sucks. Did you ever catch him cheating? And I was like, this is a very weird, blatant conversation. Yeah, like conversation to be having with each other. And she's like, well, what about you? Do you have a girlfriend and stuff? Because obviously she caught him cheating, but she doesn't want to say that, and like that is pretty personal. But she's like, do you have a girlfriend? And he's like, no, this is my personal life, Yeah. And then the phone rings again, and it's Joe. And he's asking if she enjoyed her phone call with the lady from Colorado. And she is like, no, not really, no, not that great kind of a thing, And immediately his cell phone rings, so he answers it, and they're like, oh, we got it. It's in this place, blah, blah, blah. Well, the cops are on their way now. They'll be there in like 5 to 10 minutes. And he's like, well, how long is it gonna be? And he's like, 5 to 10 minutes. Like,
I just said that.
He's like, well, tell him to hurry. And he grabs her egg timer and sets it to 5 minutes. And I'm like, when he means 5 to 10 minutes, it's probably like 7.
Yeah.
Right? Like
chill.
Anyway, but he sets it to 5 minutes and accidentally drops the egg timer right next to Nicole while she's on the phone. And Joe's like, who else is there, Nicole? And she's like, what? No one, it's just me, right?
He didn't hear the detective yelling at the IT guy. But that egg timer.
But he heard that egg timer though, right? But like the thing is that they keep telling her like, you just need to keep him on the phone so we can trace him. But they know what the address is. They know where all this is. Why is she not just like, beep?
Yeah. But also, maybe if she keeps him on the phone, it'll keep him from killing somebody.
It doesn't. Oh, so he's like, blah, 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 going at her and talking to each other. It's just all nonsense. And he kills another woman while she's on the phone, like with it, and the woman on the phone, he's like, do you want to meet? I didn't catch her name, but he's like, meet so and so, and she's like, are you there? Can someone help me? Please help me! And then he just cat, and like kills her, and then makes Nicole listen to her like death rattle and stuff, right?
Jeez.
And he's like, it's pretty jarring the first time you hear it, isn't it? Kind of a thing. And she's like, sobbing into the phone, and Nick is standing right there, unable, or not Nick. Who am I talking about? Frank. Who is Nick? Who is Nick? I had no idea.
I mean, Nicole. Maybe it came from Nicole.
Maybe. Because they call her Nick a couple of times in the movie. So, like, anyway. So Frank's standing right there, and he's like, nothing he can do because he's a cop like so many states away. Like, you know, he can't do nothing for her. But she gets upset, and Joe hangs up the phone, and so she like runs down the hallway and throws up. But it's one of those like, I didn't actually throw up because as an actress, I didn't want to do that kind of a thing, right? She doesn't even, like, she gets up from the toilet and just sits down. She's not even, like, rubbing at her mouth, like, getting a drink of water. She does nothing. She just sits there, right? And so Frank sits next to her on the floor, and he's just kind of like, I'm sorry, Nicole, you know? And she's like, I just don't think I can do this. And he's like, yeah. But it's, yep. The police get to the house, but they can't find him, and so they call Frank and tell him, they're like, he got away, we don't, you know, we have no idea where he went, but the lady was murdered inside, and so she's upset, you know, but, like, obviously she heard her die, so, like, yeah, they knew she was dead. Yeah. But she doesn't, or he's like, okay, well, I'll be in my car if you need me. And she's like, I don't want you to leave this. Like, I need you to stay here. Like, I can't be alone, you know? And so he's like, okay. And she's like, can you just sleep on the couch? And he's like, yeah, I can sleep on the couch. So she goes back to her room, and again, she has her dream, which is so much louder than the rest of the movie. I had to keep turning it down. It was so fucking loud. And she has that very awful dream again where she wakes, or that she's just in the pool and stuff, and just keeps seeing like weird photographs of herself kind of floating around and screaming and rah, 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 rah. Anyway, she wakes up, and she's wearing that horrendous top again, and she goes into the bathroom and, like, pushes open the door, and there's Frank, who is, like, getting dressed from taking a shower, and he's got his pants on at least, but he's like, oh, wow, and she's like, oh my gosh, sorry, oops, kind of like, I hate her so much, and then she's out peeking out her window again later at the neighbor and stuff, and he comes out, and she's like, sorry about that. He's like, well, no, I should have locked the door. And I'm like, yeah, you're in a house you don't know. Yeah. Like, second of all, he just does things in her house. He's not like asking like, hey, is it cool if I take a shower in your shower? Like, I wouldn't care. Go ahead, go shower. But like, maybe ask.
Maybe if she's sleeping.
Yeah, then, but like,
like, I'm just gonna get in the shower real quick before she wakes up.
I have no idea. Anyway, so she's peeking out the bitch neighbor, or out the window at the bitch neighbor, and he was like, what are you doing? And she's like, do you think she's pretty? And he goes, did your boyfriend think she was pretty?
Whoa.
And then like drops it because the phone rings, and she doesn't say anything, but she's not like, like nothing. She's just like,
maybe,
like looking out the window, and I'm like, So they get a phone call, and it says that like an FBI profiler is coming to her apartment, who's gonna be like asking her some questions and seeing if they can get more information about this guy who is obviously on a killing spree right now. And she is my favorite character. She is this black lady, no nonsense, stern, just fucking nails it every time. Bitch, I love her. And her name is Margaret Ray. And all I could think was, she's a psychologist, which makes her a shrink, which makes her Shrink Ray.
Why? Your brain.
They wrote it. They wrote a character and made her Margaret Ray, okay?
Okay, but I don't think shrink is a very well used term anymore.
Not anymore, but it's funny anyway. I wrote haha in my notes. So she plays a tape recording of a 911 call that Joe made to the police where he was like, I want to report about a woman in a house. And he's like, okay, what is happening? And he goes, I don't think she knows that I'm here. And he's like, what? And he's like, I don't think she knows that I'm about to kill her. Oh. And he's like, what? And then the phone call ends. Like, so they're like, yeah.
Okay.
But Nicole hears it, and she's like, oh, that's him, that's Joe. And they're like, yeah, we know. We already matched his voice up.
We got that,
like,
thank you.
Yeah. And she pulls out a map, okay, like this, like, just a, map of the United States, and perfectly tapes it to the wall, like it's already been taped on the back side, and just, like, sticks it to the wall like it's already, like...
Here we go, ready to go.
Here we go, it's already ready to go and stuff, right? And starts putting push pins through it into her wall, and I'm like... Rude. Okay, like, rude.
You already got tape on my wall. Yeah. You're gonna stick holes in my wall?
But I was like, but this fucking Margaret Ray, man. She just does it. But she's, like, posting a pin of everywhere that he's killed so far. And it's, that he's seeking attention. He's trying to manipulate her. And she's just going, off about who this guy is.
Yeah.
And obviously all this stuff. And she's like, the next time he calls you, you cannot let him be in control because that is what he thrives on.
Yeah.
And he will keep doing these things, like, it, you know. And I'm like, either way, he's going to do it. He's going to keep, like, upping the ante, I think, to get a rise out of her.
Piss him off.
Exactly. But, like, I'm not an FBI profiler, so... But she's like, yeah, don't let him get to her. Keep control of the conversation. And then Frank is like, well, there's a pin in every state except for Utah. And she goes, he must have missed Utah. And he was like, okay, sure, whatever. And he's like, or maybe we just don't know about one yet. She's like, well, we don't know. So you didn't get a phone call from Utah, right? And she's like, no. She's like, okay, then nothing happened in Utah, right?
Every state but Utah.
Mm-hmm. Which means he's going on the I-15.
Oh.
And then branches over to, like, the 70.
Jeez.
So... I know I mapped it out. But also, the names they use for these, like, the cities here, Overton, Nevada, is not really called Overton anymore. It's, like, encroached over by the other cities that are right next to it. So they're using old names of, like, cities.
Maybe back then it wasn't?
No.
Okay.
It's been that way for a long time now. Anyway, so Nicole goes outside because she's like, it's, you know, too crowded in there. And Frank goes with her and they're just flirting some more. And then she's like, he's getting closer. And he's like, you don't know that. She's like, look at the map, Frank. I'm like, yeah, he was looking at the map. Anyway, so then she goes to go check her mail and he comes with her. And she finds a few things in there. It's mostly bills, but then she finds an Arches postcard.
Oh, boy.
Yep.
Utah.
Yep. And it's written in red, so you're assuming it's blood.
Ooh,
but, like, it
wouldn't
says...
it be brown by then?
Right, I know. But, yeah, it's from Utah and stuff, and it just says, wish you were here, kind of a thing that he wrote on it and stuff. Like, I'm having such a fun time, and, like... So she's freaking out. But it has a return address, like one of those like self-adhesive return address stickers with a snowman on it. It was cute. So they have that address and the FBI agent calls it in and they find out that it was a young married couple in... Oh, it's what Green River is now today.
Okay.
It's
Green River is a place.
But it's Elgin, Utah. Elgin was the name of the city before it became Green River. Gotcha. So, like, Green River just kind of took it over.
Yeah.
So, like, you have a hard time, like, finding Elgin, Utah on the maps because it's Green River now. But, like, she says this street name that obviously is made up for the movie and stuff, but I was like, they use the grid system there, too.
Yeah.
They have a couple of streets that have names, but, like, they use the grid system.
So wait, they find dead people in the home? Mm-hmm. Oh, so like they hadn't been discovered yet.
Yeah.
Because otherwise it's like, I'm going to send her a postcard, so in 3 days I'm going to kill these people. Yeah. You know, like,
no, but
that's some planning.
Yeah, so he killed them and then sent her a postcard from their address and stuff. And so, which I'm like, ooh, that's...
But also, how many days has this been? Because like mail takes a minute.
Mm-hmm. Which I'm like, so that means he's taken his time to just get there.
Yeah.
But, like, from my understanding, it's been at least 3 days from the original phone call. And he's booking it to get to these other states. But the postcard gets to Massachusetts, which means it flew.
Yeah. Oh, maybe he's like, overnight that shit.
Maybe. I mean, it's not his card. Like, he don't care. He's not paying for it.
Right.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it would be like, as soon as he learned her address, he's like, I'm going to send this bitch a postcard.
Yep.
Like, okay.
Yep. Which means that he knows where she lives, kind of thing. True. But she doesn't even, like, consider that until later.
Yeah.
Like,
well, she has a group mailbox though, right? So like he knows the apartment.
No, it's a their own little separate like like a P.O. box kind of look.
Yeah.
But it's not a P.O. box. It has her apartment number on it.
So it's like apartment 4D or whatever.
Yeah. 236 is hers.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, unless it doesn't have it and they just figure it out themselves. I don't fucking know. I don't know how the mail system in Boston works. So she's a little upset and she's just sitting around waiting for, you know, the phone to ring again. But Margaret is reading Freud, right? She's just sitting there reading Freud. And Frank is like, what you reading there? She's like, Freud. And Nicole is like, they're still making you read Freud. Right? And Margaret goes, oh, I'm sorry. Are they not having you read Freud anymore? And she's like, well, yeah, they do for history class. And she's like, okay, bitch. Okay. And then, like, goes off about how Freud theorizes that there's, like, the 3 parts of your personality, the id and the whatever. I didn't pay close enough attention to that because she just goes off for a good hot minute. Yeah. And, like, everything she says, though, I'm like, fucking get it, Margaret. Fucking get it, Margaret. Get her, Margaret.
Like, why would you go up against an FBI profiler?
Right? Just because you are trying to be a psychologist doesn't mean that you are one yet.
Doesn't mean you can't shut your mouth.
But, like, she has to be so aggressive at her for, like, no fucking reason.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, Margaret came in and was just like, oh, I'm all hoity-toity, know what I'm doing, because she fucking does, okay? She fucking works it, okay? Fucking Margaret is the queen here. Anyway, so she just kind of goes off about the id for a little while, about how he's, like, and the id is, like, what your, it's your subconscious, you, like, your freed thoughts are doing in your subconscious and stuff, right? And she goes, that's what this Joe guy is doing. He thinks that he's the it. He's doing whatever he wants, whenever he wants, because he feels that he can.
Yeah.
And because he thinks he's free and yada yada. And Nicole goes, oh my gosh, he was like obsessed with my last name.
He said.
Yeah, like, and never says that until that point, but whatever.
Oh my God, he said free like 6 times on the phone. To me.
He asked if I was free.
My
and
last
stuff,
name
like,
is Freeman.
Yeah. And like just went off for a second. But she has this whole thing where she's like, oh, I'm going to smack her down and then be like, oh my gosh, you're right. Kind of, it's stupid.
You're so smart.
But it goes on for a good while, right? And then Frank goes, okay, I can't sit here anymore. So he gets up and leaves. And then for some reason, Margaret sees the picture face down of Chris and her, right? Yeah. And is just like, ex-boyfriend. And she's like, how do you know? She's like, otherwise it'd be facing up. And she's like, okay, well, you don't know me. And she was like, oh, and you think you know me? You think you're good at reading people, Nicole?
That's literally my job, you bitch.
Nicole's like, yeah, I think I am. And she's like, go ahead, try. And so she just kind of starts going on. And Nicole is just like, well, I think you're this and this and this. And every time Margaret's like, more, give me more. What else do you see? You know? And she just is like, I just think that you're your head stuck up your own ass bitch kind of a thing. And she goes, well, you kind of got it. Like, she's like, right. But you've only seen the shadows of me. You don't know who I am. And then Margaret just fucking goes off on Nicole. It's so great. She just starts like, well, I think that you're exactly like your fucking mother, and obviously blah 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 this and blah 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 that, and your mother this, and your father obviously died at a young age, probably of a heart attack, which was the only way to get away from your fucking nagging mother. And it was just and I was like, Margaret, kill it, Margaret, like,
wow.
She was my favorite fucking character.
I
like,
didn't
if you
get that before.
I know, if you watch the movie, you're just like, yeah, Margaret.
Go.
Smack her in her little boo-boo mouth. Like, oh man, she was so good. And just like rams her into the ground. And Nicole is like, okay, you know, kind of a thing. And then Margaret keeps kind of going on about how she's like, well, I think you also have a little bit of a personality disorder. I think that you have obsessive compulsive disorders, which could turn into an actual disorder, but you're not quite there yet. But I think you're also capable of true rage. And I want to see that rage, Nicole. I want to see you take it out on Joe. And you're like,
wait, what?
so it turns into this, I'm going to rip you apart. And then she's like, I want you to get him. And you're like, yeah, Margaret. Yeah, tear her down and build her up. Do it, Margaret. Like, kind of, that's who she is. She just like rips her a new one and then starts like, but you can do it, Nicole. You can do these things.
A bitch, but you're the bitch.
You're the bitch. You get it and stuff. And you're like, yeah, Margaret. And so Nicole's kind of like, yeah.
I am the bitch.
I am. I can do that. Yeah, kind of a thing, right? And it was a good, like back and forth. I loved it, which I just feel like it's stupid to have the dumb girl cat fights in movies for the sake of like, oh, girls don't get along. We're sitting right here just fine.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, we're good.
No, we're good. Like, I think you and I have only ever had like one argument.
Have we?
I don't know.
If that?
Like,
yeah.
I mean, you got mad at me for Nevada.
Well, that's true.
But anyway, Frank comes back in just a minute after that, and he's carrying a TV. He went out and bought a brand new TV because he's like, I'm done reading books. Like, so he's sitting there. But the phone rings, and this time it's a collect call. And
oh boy.
Yeah. And so she answers the phone and she's talking to him. And this time they're very much like, keep him talking. It's going to take us a minute to trace this call. So keep him talking, you know. And I'm like, I didn't realize that collect calls would be that hard to trace. So she's going off on him for a little bit, and she's like, who hurt you, Joe? Was it your mother? Blah, 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 blah. I'm
going to repeat everything that Margaret just told
me. Basically, yeah. Just like going off about like, did your mother abuse you? And Joe's just like, you don't even know what you're talking about, kind of a thing. And she's like, what? And
What?
Yeah, and he's like, you don't even try to get in my head, you know? Like, you wouldn't like it there. He's like, you're the one with the skeletons in your closet, Nicole. Do they keep you up at night? Which, looking back on it a second time, is hilarious.
Yeah.
But he's like mocking her back, and he's like, is that why you're so alone? Because you're frigid? Where's your boyfriend at right now, Nicole? Kind of a thing. And she's like, okay. And then he's like, you know, what's the difference between a 1 and a 0? And she's like, what? And he's like, how far apart do you think they are on a keypad of a phone? And she's like, I don't know. And he's like, how many renditions of 1 and a 0 do you think you can change in a phone number before you call the wrong number? And she's like, what? And he's just kind of going off for a second, like he's smarter than me. And he goes, and you know, there's only so many Freemans in Iowa, and there's a woman named Sarah Freeman with the exact same phone number, except she has a 0 instead of a 1.
Oh boy.
Yep. In her phone number, which is exactly the same as Christina's, it's just in the area code, it's the wrong. She put the wrong number in, right? Wow. But it's the exact same phone number except for the 1 digit.
Why would you do a 1 and a 0?
I have no idea.
Because they're the furthest apart.
Well, that's the thing, is that's why Joe is insistent that she called him on purpose.
Oh. Because, yeah, if it was like 1 and 2, that would make sense, or whatever, you know. But, like, yeah, that's a big...
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. But he is insistent that she called him on purpose. And she's like, you know I didn't call you on purpose. I called you on accident. He's like, don't try to change history, Nicole. You're the one that called me. And, like, there's all this stuff. But true. She's like, I didn't call you. Like, you know, it's just... If anything, I was calling Christina. But then she realizes that he's calling and talking about her mom in Iowa. Yeah. Right. And so she freaks out. And she's like, where are you? And he's like, I think you already know, Nicole. And then hangs up the phone. So she runs up to Frank, who's still on the phone, right? And it's like, where is he? Where's he calling from? And he's like, we're figuring it out, Nicole.
Bitch,
and
you know where he's calling
right?
from.
And then he goes, the call just came from inside your mother's house, okay? Like, the police are already on their way. They'll be there in just a couple of minutes. And she frantically sprints back to her bedroom to flop on the bed and call her mother, instead of calling her from right where she was. But I think it's just the movie's trying to give you, like, a sense that they're doing something in their little apartment. Yeah. Things are happening because they're moving.
Also, quick minute. Yeah. Because, like, I get that you want to, like, trace this guy and you have all your cool tech. But, you know, like, also caller ID exists. Mm-hmm. So get one. Yeah. Like, that would be helpful.
That would be so helpful.
You wouldn't even have to trace the call. Exactly. Unless he, you know, disguises it or whatever.
But what was it? Star 87? Star 87?
Maybe?
Like, if you started your number? Yeah, I think that's what it was. Anyway.
Back in the olden days.
My knees just hurt. Oh, yeah, so she sprints back into the bedroom and she starts trying to call her mom, but it doesn't work. Or, like, her mom doesn't answer, just keeps ringing and ringing and stuff, right? And then Frank goes into the bedroom. He's on his cell phone yelling at the chief of police, who says they just got to the house, and they're like, we're on our way up there. And he grabs her by the hand and yanks her back into the living room because they have to be doing something, obviously, right? And so he puts him on speakerphone, and the police, who would not be on the phone walking into the house, are walking into the house, which also, this just happened, okay? Like 2 minutes ago, they got this phone call. You're telling me you scrambled your SWAT team in that amount of time? SWAT takes, like, at least 10 minutes.
Yeah. And, like, I could understand if they had anticipated that he was going to go to her mom's house, which they should have, but they never mentioned that, right? No. So, no. Unless that's just, like, unspoken, they were prepared. Dumb.
No.
Yeah. She didn't even prepare for that.
She didn't even prepare for that. And, like, I would have been, like, concerned because Joe obviously figured out where the fuck you live and what your name is based off of the area code of your phone number. So why would you not assume that he was smart enough to figure out your mother's? Yeah. Like,
did she tell him she was trying to call her mom?
No. She just said she was trying to call someone else.
So he just looked up all the Freemans and was like, please work, please work.
Yeah.
Like, okay.
So, but I
mean, what if she was calling, like, Jack Jones? Like, you're never going to figure that out.
I think he figured out just from the phone number. Yeah. So, like, but anyway.
Dumb.
It's dumb. So they get in there and they're like, there's no one in the house right now. Oh my gosh, what do we do? Blah, blah, blah. Then the back door opens and it's her mother coming inside from walking the dog. And the mother's like, what is happening? Yeah. And they're like, oh my gosh. And Nicole's like, oh, let me talk to her. And so Frank is like, hey, officer, give over your phone. Blah, blah. And so then she's like, mommy. And she's like, Nicole, what is going on? And she's like, oh, mom, just do what the police tell you to do. And she's like, what is happening? She's like, mom, I'll tell you what it's about when it's over. Like,
oh my gosh.
And the mom is like, what the fuck is happening? And I'm like, I don't blame you, bitch mom.
Right?
Like,
imagine walking into your house and the SWAT team is in your house.
Yeah.
Be like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Like,
whoa. Okay.
Yep. Oh, so while she's on the phone with her mom, the apartment phone rings, and she goes to answer it, and it's Joe, and he's like, just don't try to get into my head, Nicole. Like, just don't try to do that again. And she's like, okay, what the fuck? And then he hangs up, and you find out that he had been calling from a cell phone, which he stole from the Utah couple, and so they didn't know it was missing, you know? Which, like, today's age, everyone would be like, where the fuck is their cell phone?
Yeah.
Like, where is it? You know, because everyone has one, right?
Yeah.
So then she's sitting with Frank again, and they're just chatting a little bit about how he's been so great. And he's like, well, it's my job. And she's like, oh. And he's like, well, that came out wrong. It's not just my job. I would want to be here to protect you, even if it wasn't my job. And she's like, really? Just,
oh, no.
And that he wants to be there. He wants to keep her safe. And I'm like, you've known her for 3 days.
Yeah, the only reason you want to keep her safe is because you had to in the first place.
And then tells her to go to bed, which he does that every single night.
Oh, that would piss me off.
Every night. He's like, well, why don't you go get some sleep? Well, why don't you go get some sleep?
You're in my house.
Like, yeah.
No.
Just, why don't you go get some sleep?
And
so she goes.
I really want to lay on the couch and watch TV. Please go to bed.
Right. Ugh. So the next morning, Nicole, and she also notices that he likes to watch like cooking channels and stuff, right? So he watches cooking videos a lot. Anyway, so the next morning, Nicole doesn't seem to have gotten much sleep. She spends the day waiting for the phone to ring. I think Frank wasn't in the apartment like all fucking day. He just wasn't there.
Okay.
Like you just see her like walking around the house like lonesome.
It's empty.
Yeah. And he gets them some food, but she's way too anxious and nervous to eat. So he is like, well, I'm going to go heat these up. And she doesn't even think about it. Like doesn't think. So he goes over, pops the food in the microwave, and like as she hears it clicking on, she's like, don't use the microwave. And then like the lights turn off and she's like, oh, dang it. And he's like, oh, whoops, kind of a thing. Sorry, guess I'll go flip the breaker in the basement, you know. And she's like, oh, you. And he goes, hey, is the pool still down there? And she was like, yeah. And but I mean, it's been empty since I moved in. He's like, oh, that was my favorite place here, kind of a thing, right? Yeah. And you're like, Frank.
Wait, how old is he then? Like older than her?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's at least in his late 20s.
Oh, okay.
Maybe in his early 30s. He's not like old, but
okay.
He's older than her, I'm assuming. Anyway, so he goes downstairs to fix it, but he left his cell phone upstairs, right? So it starts ringing, so she picks it up, and it's Margaret. And she's like, where's Frank? And she's like, oh, the power just went out in my place, like, or like the breaker flipped, so he's going down to fix it. And she's like, well, you need to tell him the second he gets up there, the shit is going down. And she's like, what do you mean? Police found one of his victims' vehicles at an airport.
Oh boy. And
we were checking the Utah couple's like cell phone records and found that phone pinged off a tower at the airport. So that means he flew. Yeah. Probably which for half a second I was like, wait, wouldn't they have like scanned who he was? They don't know his fucking name. So like it doesn't even fucking matter. Like he literally could have just walked up and been like, oh hi, I am Tyler Johnson and I am getting on a plane to Massachusetts. Thank you. Like they have no fucking clue. Yeah. And so,
oh, that's even scarier because, like, obviously she knows what he sounds like, but he could be anyone.
Oh. Yeah. So the power comes back on, and she answers it, and it's Joe, and he is like, "This is some bad weather we're having because it's like a storm brewing outside." And she's like, "What?" And then you hear thunder crashing, and he goes, "Ooh, that sounded pretty close." And she's like, "What?" And he's like, "Go to the window." And she's like, "No." And he's like, go to the window, Nicole. So she goes to the window and like looks out, and he goes, oh, I thought you'd be pretty. And then she looks down and she sees this like dark figure, because obviously it's dark outside, right? She sees this dark figure in a hoodie like step behind a tree, and she's like, like, who is that? She's freaking out, you know. And just then she starts hearing the buzzer at her door that's like trying to let him in, you know? Yeah. And then she hears knocking at her door, which I'm like, why would you assume? Like, it's immediately. Yeah. Like, you just saw him do that, and then you hear knocking at her door, and she's like, who's there?
I get it startling you. Yeah. Like, you would be like, but...
Yeah, no. But, like, the buzzer's currently buzzing. Yeah. And, like, she hears a knock at the door, and she's like, who's there? And it's like, it's Frank. What do you mean? Like, you know, let me in.
Also,
like,
why did he not just walk back in the...
Because she put the...
Oh, okay.
Well, but I don't know, because when he left, she didn't put the chain on the door, but the chain was on the door. So she opens the door, and she's like, he's here! And he's like, what? And she's like, he's down trying to buzz to get in, and he can hear the buzzer going off, right? And so he's like, okay, and like yanks out his gun, and he's like, stay here. She doesn't. She goes with him, right? And they see the elevator coming up. Okay, or like it's dinging, like it's coming up. And so he pulls his gun on the door, and the door swings open, and it's this little old lady. And she's like, Mrs. Norton, did you just let anyone into the house? Kind of, I don't remember what her name was, but, and she was like, yes, I let in a nice looking young man. He said he was your friend. And I'm like, don't fucking do that. No. Like, post 9/11, don't do that. No. Like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, post anything.
Yeah.
You know, it's just like,
in general,
don't do that.
Like, well, I'm going to go in, you keep buzzing for your friend.
Yeah. But then, Frank makes Nicole and the old lady go back to her apartment. To old Nicole's apartment.
Old lady's apartment.
Old lady's apartment is where you need to go.
Dumbass.
Yeah, just be like, can she stay in your apartment for like 10 minutes while I search the building kind of a thing? Anyway, so he's searching the building and he's calling for backup and telling all these people that they need to get here because he's here, right? Yeah. And anyway, so they search the whole building and they can't find him. So they just have a whole bunch of like FBI agents like swarming the property now, right? But they only apparently have like 2 entrances. They have the front entrance and the back entrance. So they're like, we only need to really watch those entrances because, you know, those are the only 2 entrances into the building. I'm like, besides the windows.
He's in the building.
Except he's in the building. But they like can't find him hiding anywhere in the place. And I'm like, besides inside an apartment? Like, you should be knocking on all the damn doors. Yeah. Like, if there's a murderer here and you know he likes murdering women, there's women in the building. Like,
is there still a PA system from the school? You can be like, attention all citizens.
Please leave.
Get the fuck out of your homes.
Anyway, so they swarm the building and stuff, and Nicole's like, I don't want to be here, and Frank is like, yeah, you're right, let's have you leave. And Margaret does the dumbest thing where she's like, no, she has to stay. And I'm like, why? Yeah. Why does she have to stay?
'Cause she's gonna get it.
Yeah.
She's gonna be the bitch.
Yeah. But they were using her as bait to get him to like go into her apartment, right? Great. But like, Frank is the only one in her apartment. They're watching TV and stuff, okay? And she's like, they're just sitting really close. And it's like the weirdest TV angle too. Or like the camera angle is sitting just ever so slightly lower than them. So they look like they're like hunched up on the couch, like with their shoulders. It's just awful. And so then she's like, do you really have to sleep on the couch tonight?
Oh, yes.
And then they start making out. And
with a killer in your apartment building. Uh-huh. Like, I would not be kicking back. No. I would not be watching TV. No. I'd be gnawing my fingers off. Not fucking a guy. Like, what?
But he's like, so they start making out, you know, and the FBI agent, Margaret is just like, is everything okay? And they're on the radio and they both like, oh my gosh, yeah, everything's fine. And so she's like, and he goes, listen, I want to, but we cannot tonight. And she was like, and I'm like, yes, thank you, Frank. And she's like, okay, I get it. Just another night kind of a thing. And he's like, yes, another night after we catch this guy and everything will be fine, you know? Yeah. And I'm like, my other thing to me though, is that like, I would not feel okay. Like, that does not put me in the mood whatsoever. No. Not at all. No. Like, so people that are doing that when they know there's a killer on the loose, y'all weird. Yeah. I mean, not to kink shame, but I'm kink shaming. Maybe it's like an adrenaline maybe. I don't know. So Frank falls asleep on the couch and Nicole goes to bed. And she gets up after a little bit and to go use the bathroom. And we hear the front door creak open, and we see a dark shadow like standing and watching Frank sleeping. Do they not have an agent outside of her door? No. Because if they don't, shame on them. Why don't they have a couple of agents in the house is all I'm wondering.
Yeah, that too.
Like, it makes sense later.
Does it make sense, or is it explained? Because there's a difference.
It doesn't make sense. It's explained. I mean, it kind of makes sense in the explanation, but like, anyway. So she's in the bathroom, and I apparently wrote bathroom. But so someone's creeping inside and then is standing in her shower, and you hear Nicole, and she starts screaming, and Frank, and so Frank jumps up and runs into the bathroom. And because you don't get to see what happens while they're in the bathroom, but I'm assuming he got clonked out for like a good 30 seconds or something, because Nicole and her nipples are now kidnapped. Okay. And so he like is kind of like crawling out of the bathroom trying to get up, and gets to his radio, and they hear a shot go off. So the other agents are all now like, and start running inside, and they're trying to get on the radio like, what the hell's going on up there? And he's like, oh, he got Nicole and he got my gun, blah, 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 and all this stuff, right? And the whole time they've got this like music going on. And like it doesn't, unless you hear it, it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. But like it's like this supposed to be metal-ish music to like hype you up kind of a thing. And I'm just like, oh, it's so loud. Like I can't, and I like that kind of music, but I'm just like, what are they saying?
Turn it down a little
Frank, what? Yeah, like what? Anyway, so they start searching the entire building again and stuff, right? And they hear a couple of shots fire and they like freak out and they go running and the power goes off to the whole building.
Of course.
And so now they're running around in the dark trying to figure out what's going on. And that's when they hear the 2 gunshots. And they find 2 dead FBI agents. They've been shot in the head. Okay, which I'm like, Joe in the dark just shot these 2 guys.
Look out.
In the dark. Like, y'all fucked. Because Joe is, Anyway, so then they're back in Nicole's apartment and Frank is just kind of yelling at Margaret, blaming her, and he's just like, this is your fault, like you shouldn't have let her use her, or I shouldn't have let you use her as bait. And then Joe comes on the radio and he's like, hello, is anybody there? Mm-hmm. And they get on and he's like, you motherfucker, kind of a thing. And he's like, I'll be in touch soon, and then cuts off the radio, right? And Nicole wakes up on this like super fluffy rug and just keeps like clinging to it the entire time. And like we just see her from like the same view the entire scene. But she did that all in one scene, so I'm really impressed. But we see the silhouette of Joe's legs walking back and forth behind her in the mostly dim whatever room they're in, right? And she's like, I just don't know why you're doing this. And he's like, come on, you know who I am. And she's like, I don't know who you are. And he's like, do you want to see my face? And she's like, no. And he's like, why are you scared to know who I am? And she's like, I just don't want you to hurt me. I don't want to, why are you doing this to me? And he's like, I'm not a monster. I'm just like you. I'm here doing what you want me to do. I'm just here to help you. And she's like, I don't know what the fuck are you talking about? Yeah. Anyway, so he drags her into another room and shows her that they're in Bitch Neighbor's apartment. And Bitch Neighbor is laying there like, oh my gosh, help me.
The next one.
And he stabs her, right? He kills her.
Okay.
And, I mean, we don't get to see all of that, but we know it's happening because she starts screaming and you hear stabbing and stuff, right? And the next morning, Frank is like pacing around the apartment, not knowing what to do. And at this point, though, I would be pounding on every single door of the, like... Yeah. You know, like, you don't know if he left the building, so why are you not checking the building? Yeah. Like... All of it, you know? I would also be afraid that other people had been hurt, because they were. Yeah. Anyway, so they hear Frank calls the phone of the apartment. And so Joe calls the phone of the apartment. So Frank answers it really quick, and he's like, if you want her, come and get her, and then hangs up. And that's literally the phone call. And the IT guy calls, and he's like, he's calling from this apartment number in the same building and stuff, right? So they freak out, go running next door, and all of this starts happening like really fast. Okay, so here's the very end of the movie. It's like, it's all very quick. And so they run over there and they break down the apartment door, which is like, it was like one kick that it went in. Like she had the chain on the door, she had the deadbolt on. They rush in there and they find Nicole laying on the floor, and Bitch Neighbor is dead, and Frank runs up to her, and she's very traumatized. She does play traumatized very well. Like, I was like, this is a very believable moment to me, because she was just like, like just trembling and shaking and just like zoning out and stuff. And he's like caressing her face, and he's like, it's okay, Nicole. It's okay. I'll never leave you again. It's okay, Nicole. You're safe now. And just like, but there's like dead Bitch Neighbor laying right there. And Margaret's like, motherfucker. Like, kind of like, Urgh. So they're riding the elevator down. Margaret, and Nicole and stuff. And he's like, it's going to be okay. We're going to take you to the hospital now. It's going to be all right, you know? And they show the hallway, and the doorbell dings, or the elevator doors ding, and Nicole steps out, but no one's with her. Mm-hmm. She just steps out. And you turn and you see that she's covered a little bit in blood, which is to be assumed that, you know, someone had just been murdered in front of her. Yeah. But as she's walking down the hallway, these a black police officer and a white police officer that are very much no one she's ever seen before come walking up towards her. And they're like, what's your name? And she's like, Nicole. And they're like, Nicole Freeman? And she's like, yeah. And they're like, can we talk to you, Nicole? No. And she's like, huh? And they're like, is that blood? And you see she's got blood on her hand and on her shirt, which she's wearing the shirt.
Ew.
And which I'm just like, ruin that shirt, ruin it. But she's got a little bit of blood on her and stuff, right? And they're like, can we talk to you upstairs? And so they take her back to her apartment, which she's still kind of walking in a daze, and sits down on her couch. And they're like, when was the last time you saw your boyfriend? And she was like, Chris? This is about Chris?
Oh, no.
And they're like, yeah, his parents said that he was supposed to have come home a few days ago, but they haven't heard from him, and he hasn't arrived yet. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, it takes like how many days to get from Massachusetts to Nevada driving? Like, you know, like, I think it's like about 8 days. Anyway, but they haven't heard from him. He hasn't called them, right?
I mean, my brother lives in Michigan, and it takes 3 days driving.
No, that's nonsense. It's too many days. And she's like, well, I saw him about 8 days ago. We broke up. And she's doing her little breathy voice again, right? Yeah. And they, so the one detective, the black detective, is talking to her, and the white detective is, if you're ever in your sane mind, do not let a detective walk around your apartment, is all I'm saying. Yeah. Okay? Like, they need to be, like, don't walk around, please. Stay here. Thank you. Do you have a warrant? No? Okay, stay here. Yeah. Like, just so you're all aware, okay? Like, and listen, I like the cops. I trust the cops. I don't trust the cops. Okay? Like, I don't trust anybody to do anything anytime ever.
If anyone was pacing around my house, I'd be like,
don't do that. Stay here.
What are you doing?
Thank you. Bye-bye. And like, obviously they're allowed to look at things if they're out in the open kind of a stuff, you know, but like, yeah. Anyways, but he finds, the white cop finds the map that was up on the wall, but it's like crumbled up on the floor. And when he uncrumbles it, it's got the route that Joe was taking, but this time it's written in a red ink, like a marker had drawn on it. Okay. And he's like, okay. And, it's the route from Boston to Overton, Nevada. Mm-hmm. Okay. Which is where the first murder happened. Right. And, the one cop is like, yeah, his parents said he was headed there, but he hasn't shown up. And she's just like, well, he was supposed to drive. And they're like, well, his car's out front with a fistful of tickets on it. So, and then goes over and picks up the face down picture frame of her and Chris. And when he flips it over, it's her and Frank.
What?
So Frank is Chris.
What?
Yes. And
wait.
Yes. So then all of this kind of starts happening all at the same time. She starts having flashbacks while they're talking to her and stuff, right? Okay. And the flashback is of Nicole walking into the abandoned pool downstairs, and she sees Chris with the bitch neighbor having sex in the pool, but up against the opposite wall, like the furthest wall of the shallow end, okay, missionary style, standing up. So you explain that to me.
In an empty pool.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they're just like down there banging.
That sounds
Bitch
sexy.
has an apartment.
Yep.
Like, why are they not?
The pool is just very
pool's
sexy.
So sexy. Like, just that weird echo, I guess, just gets you good. Anyway, but they don't notice her there, and so she, I guess, leaves or whatever. Well, Nicole's sitting there just like, kind of like, what? What are you talking about? Right? Like, she's just very like, don't know what's happening. Well, she thinks she hears the phone ring, so she picks it up, and there's Joe's voice again, who's just like, oh, did you miss me? Blah, 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 da, 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 like kind of going off at her for a second. And she's like, are you tracing this? Like looks to the black cop and is like, are you tracing this? He's like, no, we're not tracing it. Like what? And she's like, you need to be tracing it. He could still be in the building. Like you need to be like, and he's like, what are you talking about? What? Like, he's like, why would we be tracing your phone? Like,
me, ma'am.
You haven't done anything, you know, kind of, right? And well, the other cop is like wandering around her building and stuff, or her apartment. And he goes into her bedroom and sees that her whole apartment is actually pretty disheveled. Like, it's not as, like, put together as she had it, like, in the rest of the movie. Yeah. But he sees that some of her sheets underneath the top mattress, because the mattress is kind of askew, is, like, covered in, like, blood spots. Okay. So he lifts it up, and that's where he sees the bloody knife and, like, a whole bunch of blood on the mattress. And he's like, other cop, you may want to come and see this. But then he looks up and he sees the closet, and I don't know why he chooses to look in the closet, but it's the closet that she keeps closing throughout the movie, right? Yeah. Well, we flash back to Nicole upstairs again, like she's in her apartment, and you see Frank Chris sitting on the bed, and he's about to like make a phone call, and she comes up behind him and stabs him. And then the cop opens up the closet door and Frank Chris's body falls out and he's wrapped in plastic, which I'm guessing is like a shower curtain or something because it's huge. But like wrapped in plastic, and his body just falls out of the closet, which made the "you've got skeletons in your closet" line like yeah. And so the cop who's talking to Nicole, the black cop, and that's the only way I can differentiate between the two because they said their names. I don't remember their names. Yeah. So the black cop takes the phone from Nicole because he's like, "Who are you talking to?" and listens. But it's the dial tone where you've been on the phone for too long, and it's the "if you would like to make a call" kind of, Yeah. And he's like, "There's no one there," and she's like, "No, he is there. He's there. You need to call Margaret Ray. She'll tell you all about it." Like kind of going off for a second, right? And let's see, the next thing we see is the EMT rushing down the hall of her building like they did at the beginning of the movie. And they're passing a bunch of people that she had seen earlier in the movie, but were people that were in her weirdo fantasy that she was having, her like mental breakdown, but they're like people who live in her apartment complex, which is weird to me because she fantasizes that like, there was this dude with a basketball that I think like lives in the apartment. She fantasized him as being the maintenance man, and I was like, don't you have an actual maintenance man? Like, so you fantasize some random other guy to be anyway.
So it's like a Wizard of Oz type thing, like you're the Scarecrow, and you're okay.
But like you only see it for like 2 seconds, so like most of it you're not even really paying attention to, I think. But the EMT rushes in, and you start hearing someone saying, "Nicole, Nicole." Nicole again, and Margaret's standing there, right? Yeah. She's got a little flashlight and she's looking into her eyes. She's not an FBI profiler. She's her therapist.
What?
Yes. So the therapist is like, how long has she been like this? And he's like, I don't know, since we called you over, kind of a thing. And she's like totally non-responsive. Nicole's just like laying there, just like
freaked out.
Yeah, not saying anything. And she's like, well, she needs to be in the hospital. And he's like, right after we book her for murder. And she's like, oh my gosh. And he's like, do you know anything about this? Like, like you're her therapist. Did she say anything to you? And she's like, I don't know. She was pretty upset about Chris breaking up with her. Like, kind of a thing, but I told her that if she needed anything to like, just call me. Mm-hmm. And then the scene kind of ends, and then we go to a different, like, closing scene where it's Nicole right after she had her shower after, like, the mom and daughter murder. Yeah. She's standing there, like, sobbing into the phone, and you hear Joe's voice being like, "See, Nicole, it was never about me. It was always about you." And then the movie ends.
So none of it happened?
None of it happened.
Except for her killing her boyfriend.
Yeah. But it also, like, it never clarifies. I think she went and killed the bitch neighbor. Yeah. But they never clarified that. They never say if she did or if she didn't. But, like, why else would she be covered in blood right then?
At that time.
So.
Okay. Yep. I mean, good twist. Mm-hmm. That's, sure. Okay. Mm-hmm. So, like, the plot is good. It's just, like, the acting that's shitty.
I just felt like they just did it poorly. I feel like it was a movie ahead of its time, and they just didn't do it well enough.
Didn't have the money.
Yeah. They definitely did not have the camera for it, that's for sure. Like, half the time I was like, iPhones were not invented then, but did you film this on an iPhone? Like,
okay. Mm-hmm. Interesting. So she fantasized that her ex-boyfriend was Frank. Mm-hmm.
So obviously she didn't actually kill Chris. In her mind, he's just a different person now who would do nothing to hurt her and would never cheat on her because, he's not a douche. So,
okay.
But I was like, okay, but how much of that was real and how much of that was just kind of in her head, you know? Like,
and also, that's an elaborate fucking story to come up with.
In your own little head.
Yeah, like, a serial killer that's traveling from state to state, and then he got some mail, and then he went after your mom, and then, like, wow.
Yeah. Which obviously makes sense that he couldn't kill her mom because her mom's still alive. Like, if she had been killed in her fantasy, it wouldn't work to be alive later on.
It makes a lot more sense as to how they traced the calls that quickly now.
Now that it's all fake. Yeah. And why the FBI agents weren't doing the correct job that they should have been doing in the first place. And, like, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's cool. I guess. In a
weird way. It makes a lot more sense when you're watching the movie, but I
still also no.
Yeah. Still also no.
All right. Well, how do you rate it?
I rated it a 5. Okay. I feel like they had something.
Maybe if they replaced Nicole with another actress.
Maybe, but like, she kind of grew on you as the movie went, but you were still like, oh, fucking Nicole, like, just doing weird alien things, like, yeah.
But I wonder if they wanted her to do, like, the innocent act so that you didn't suspect that anything weird was happening.
Yeah, but I'm like, I wouldn't have suspected anything anyway, because she was just like, from my understanding, we're to assume that Chris cheated on her, and she probably got upset with him, and he left. Yeah. Like, you know.
He moved out.
Yeah. And...
First I thought you were going to say that he was the caller, and then I was like, that doesn't make sense, because she would recognize his voice.
Yeah, but no. And so Joe is just some made-up voice in her head.
Just the average Joe.
Yep, it's her id, I guess. So, like, you know.
Okay, do you recommend people watch it?
No.
Just straight up no.
If you just want to see nipple, then yeah, but like...
I mean, yeah, there you go. Don't watch the movie?
Don't watch it, it's dumb. I mean, if you want to watch it for Margaret, just slap this bitch, then yeah, it's great.
Cool.
But... yeah.
Well, thank you for that.
Yes.
Hope you guys
Super
enjoyed.
fun ride.
Yeah, I feel like my brain is still processing. Like, I don't really have words yet. I'm just like, whoa.
Yep.
The alien stuff kind of makes more sense now that I know she's a killer. Because if you're stabbing a knife through your TV dinner, plastic and food, yeah, you're a fucking serial killer.
Psychopath.
Yeah.
Like,
okay.
Yep.
That makes more sense. And it's just so funny that her brain was like, I know this elaborate way, and I'm gonna find you through the phone numbers. Yep. And, like, I'm making up this crazy...
nonsense.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Okay. Fun.
Yep. Which, I mean, it kind of, like, with her mom being like, I know you overreact before. You're like, but you don't know the half of it.
That is true.
Like, but, I mean, you cheat on me and I catch you, I'm stabbing you, too. Okay. So, like, keep that in mind, Brandon.
Yes. Noted. I'm so sorry.
But, like... I mean, if I catch you in my house, you both getting stabbed.
Where did you watch it?
I bought it.
Oh, yeah, you had to buy it off the freaking Amazon.
Yep.
And it took, like, 24 days to ship.
Yeah, it took forever to get here.
Well, this one's gone on a very long time.
Yes,
but
well,
it was fun. I liked it. Hopefully you guys did, too.
Yes. Thanks for joining us.
See you next time.
See you next time.